Good evening. My name is Faisal Khatib, and I'm with Better Informed Housing. Better Informed Housing Corporation is located at 218 North Jefferson, Suite 103 in Chicago, Illinois. Our phone number is 312-533-2688, and our fax number is 312-775-0980. Our email address, if you want to contact us, is neighbors@betterinformed.org. You could reach us at here today. If you want, at the number at the bottom of your screen. That number is 312-738-1060. So we're here tonight to talk about just general housing issues. So if you want to call in, please feel free to call in and ask us any questions you like. But I think the most important thing is people forget about what is important about housing. Why is this such an issue, and why would you be informed about it? And at betterinformed.org, you'll find more information about that. And what we talk about on there, and our objective is to provide education and information to both residential and commercial people who are looking to acquire property, own property, or rent property. And this is a very important issue. Why? Because it's where we live, and we need to make sure that our rights are protected. And there are so many different rights. It's in law school they teach you something called the bundle of sticks. And in the bundle of sticks, with each stick is a different right. So, for example, possession is a right, which is different than a lease interest, which is different than a mortgage, and ownership. All those are different ways of having an interest in property. And one person can own all the sticks, and someone else, and then you can give away those sticks to different people. And each stick that you give out gives a new person a different interest. Now, the importance of talking about housing and being educated about it is knowing what each of those sticks mean and what rights do you have. So, for example, when your landlord asks for a 9-month security deposit, in the city of Chicago, that's illegal. They can't do that under the landlord-tenant ordinance. But if you didn't have your rights and didn't know, you'd never know that was illegal. That your landlord has to give you back your security deposit. And so long as there's no significant damage and there's other problems that may exist after you left, non-payment of rent doesn't count. They actually have to be damage to the property, and they have to outline specifically what that damage is. That is a right the tenant has. So many people, the reason we have these rules to protect people is because a lot of people abuse that. And which segues into also the Fair Housing Act. We are now celebrating 50 years from when the Fair Housing Act was enacted. And it was signed by Lyndon Johnson in 1968, right after, actually a few days after, the Honorable Reverend Martin Luther King was assassinated in 1968. Now, the Fair Housing Act was designed and written in order to protect many people who are discriminated against, and that was based on national origin, religion, color, creed, sex, as well as family. So, for example, a landlord cannot say, "Well, I will not rent to children or rent to families that have kids." So, little nuance: if you're pregnant and you let the landlord know that you're pregnant and he refuses to rent to you, that could be a violation of the Fair Housing Act. Other things that could be a violation of the Fair Housing Act: if one group of people is treated differently than another group, and that's based on their religious affiliation, their sexual orientation, their color, national origin. Those are things that would impact the legality of what they're trying to do. So, for example, condo associations. A condo association that celebrates Christmas and pays for Christmas and puts Christmas decorations up and then imposes rules or regulations or denies the ability or puts restrictions, simply a notice, for example, saying you have to provide a 2-month notice to put up your decorations if you're non-Christian decorations. That is a violation of the Fair Housing Act. Now the question is, what are the damages and what can arise from that? And in some cases, the mere fact that that's taking place and the imposition on the individual who that's impacting there could be a huge financial windfall, and it could be huge problems. But setting aside the windfall, it's important to make sure that the rules are followed and the things are done the right way. And one group of people under the Fair Housing Act is not more important than another group. Now, one of the other reasons that the Fair Housing Act was implemented, I don't want to say really, but when it was implemented, was because there were things called redlining and white flight. Oh, we have a caller. Let us see.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
I want to know why, us, the homeless veterans, regular U.S. citizens of Chicago are no longer first in line to get homes or to get a loan or for anything because we got DACA. Now they think they're first in line, and all of us US citizens become second citizens in our own country, in our own city. I'm 70 years old, and I lived there all my life. And it's changed so much. Why? They give them a safe zone, and they're in the zone, north, south, east, or west, in Chicago, that's safe for the regular citizens. So why are we second citizens now instead of us getting first choice?
So you're asking why are American citizens or veterans given second-class position to DACA recipients?
That's what I'm asking.
So I don't think that would. I can't speak to that, but I don't think that would be the case. In terms of being second position to DACA, essentially
Sir, excuse me, it is true. They get a safe zone, and Chicago citizens of Chicago don't get a safe zone. So you're not telling me that we're not second citizens in our own city.
I think if people have a right, if this is a safe zone for DACA recipients or any other immigrants who, for whatever reason, don't have legal status, the fact that we're a safe zone, in my opinion, I think that's a good thing. That's my personal opinion. That's not the opinion of CAN TV or Better Informed Housing.
Okay, citizens of this great city don't have safe zones. North, south, east, or west. You name me one safe zone in Chicago. There are none except in the DACA where they live. They're given a safe zone.
So I think, well, let's talk about a little bit what a safe zone is. So this is not immigration, so we're talking about strictly on housing issues. But from a safe zone, essentially what it does is it prevents it restricts federal authorities from moving into, or ICE agents essentially, from moving in to arrest individuals who don't have legal immigrant status. That may be here without proper visas, have overextended their visas, or came here without being legal, essentially, with no permanent residency card. They're not U.S. citizens. So that's the safe zone.
Okay, if they're not citizens, they shouldn't be here. That's the law. And none of our lawmakers that are Democratic want to go with that. They all say, oh, no, we need to DACA. Why?
Well,
we're take care of us first.
So that's it's a much, much bigger question that has nothing, that it doesn't have much to do with housing. However, technically we're all immigrants. I mean, everybody in this country came here as an immigrant. The only ones that were indigenous are the indigenous Native Americans who were here before the white people came. And
You're absolutely right. My grandmother and grandfather came from Mexico.
Okay.
I'm Mexican American. I fought for my country in Vietnam gladly. But guess what? We come back and we got to be second citizens because DACA is getting all the welfare, all the food stamps, all free education, everything else free, Section 8. Why?
Well, like I said, that's not the housing question. I'm sure there's probably an immigrant or a DACA forum that would be here that we can talk about it. But I do have another caller.
Thank you.
And
Thank you,
I
sir.
thank you for calling and calling in, and everybody has their opinion as to what the issues are. Wishing you all the best. Next caller?
Hello.
Yes.
Hi. So I wanted to ask this. I had a friend who was renting a condo,
Yes.
and of course, she paid a security deposit when she moved in.
Okay.
During the course of her time there, she threw a party, and one of her guests damaged a portion of the building that was not in her unit, but it was still in the building.
Okay.
And now that she's trying to move out, the landlord is trying to withhold her security deposit to try to recoup a portion of the damages. And I just wanted to know if that was legal because, one, she did not actually damage anything, and two, the damage wasn't done to her unit.
All right. So that's a very good question. So the landlord has a right to say that. So landlord's right. There's two sides. There's the landlord and there's the tenant. First of all, if there was damage to the unit, the fact that it was done by one of her guests, she would be responsible for the damage that her guests would cause. Even though she personally didn't do it, they were there because she gave them authority to come in. So when she signed a lease, if you remember earlier in the show I talked about the bundle of sticks, she took a lease right or leasehold stick and she took the possession stick. And so when her guests come in, then she's authorizing them to operate under her right of possession. And so she's responsible for the damage that they might cause. Now, just because that's the case, there has to be proof that it was her guest that caused the damage. And let us say that for whatever reason she admitted, yes, it was a friend of mine, but it wasn't me, or whatever the case may be. That technically, that is an actual admission that she's responsible for the damage. Now, the landlord, on the other hand, has to follow certain rules in order to collect on that security deposit. So the first rule, they'd have to be to specify specifically what the cost of the repairs were. They have to send notice to the tenant of when it took place, and there's some time requirements as to when they can send that notice. And then once she's moved out, if she's asking for a security deposit, he has to provide detailed accounting as to what the cost of those repairs were. Now, I don't know if you're still there, caller, but do you know how much time passed between when the damage happened and now that she's trying to move out?
So I think it was only a couple of weeks or months. It wasn't long. I guess the only question I would have then would be, as I said, the damage wasn't done to her actual unit, but to another part of the building. I think one of the guests got a little overly
Right.
excited and slammed a door so hard that he accidentally broke the glass.
Ooh.
Right. So she was saying, nothing was done to my unit. No one damaged anything in my unit. You should go after him personally, but I should get the deposit back. But even if it's another part of the building, it sounds like you're saying she could still be responsible.
Yes, because she let them into the building.
Okay.
So I know, for example, in the building that I live in, if I have guests come in, as a property owner or as a tenant, I'm responsible for everybody that I've brought into the building under my watchful care, so to speak. So even though someone else did it, I'm still liable for whatever damage that they cause. So specifically, whether it happened outside or within, he could hold her responsible. I mean, she could argue in court, if it comes to that it wasn't her, it was somebody else, and it wasn't in my unit, it was outside the unit. But it also depends, is this one building that the landlord owns the whole building, or is it where it's a bunch of condos and she's renting from an individual owner? And it's a condo association, for example, that's charging and that the owner is pushing it forward. But I would say most likely that she would have some culpability to that. But where her defense would be if the landlord followed the rules and did everything like he's supposed to make sure he can hold back whatever money or whatever damage exists. In the end, when it comes to advising as an attorney, when I advise my clients who are landlords, my position is it's cheaper just to pay the security deposit and just walk away, because the mistake that a landlord could potentially make by not following the right path in holding back a security deposit is a lot more damaging than the actual amount he's trying to hold. So if the door cost $1,000 and he didn't do it the right way, he could be liable up to 3 times the amount of the security deposit, plus attorney's fees. So Yeah, so I would say that the best thing is just give back the security deposit if I were in his shoes. But you should make sure that he follows the right rules.
Okay, I appreciate that. I'm going to let her know. Thank you so
Perfect. Thank you
much.
for calling, caller.
Hmm.
So that's wonderful. We had two wonderful callers today. Thank you very much for calling and calling in. I want to reiterate that we are Better Informed Housing. You can find us at the website, www.betterinformed.org. We're at 218 North Jefferson, Suite 103 in Chicago, Illinois 60661. Our phone number is 312-533-2688. And you can email us at neighbors@betterinformed.org. Again, if you have any questions, you can feel free to call us. The number's at the bottom of our screen, 312-738-1060. And our objective is to build the future, save the community, and help our neighbors by educating and informing people of their real estate rights. So we were talking briefly about the Fair Housing Act and its anniversary coming up after 50 years, and the people that it protects. And the reason of implementing the Fair Housing Act was based on the way that specifically African American and black people were being treated by whites in this country as it came to housing. So certain neighborhoods would have covenants in their bylaws and in the organization of these planned developments where black people were not allowed to live in these neighborhoods. And they would specifically say whites only. And that was pervasive for forever until this Fair Housing Act was passed that's made such acts illegal. The other aspect that it prevented was things called redlining, where real estate agents or lenders would refuse to lend in certain areas and say that we are not going to lend or push and steer, they called it steering, groups of people, specifically blacks, away from certain neighborhoods to prevent them from moving in. Those things are all made illegal by the Fair Housing Act and required that blacks, whites, Asians, Arabs, Jews of any national origin, religion, or color, or sexual orientation, or familial status could live anywhere without being discriminated against. This was a huge thing back in 1968 during the Civil Rights era. And these are the things that it helped and prevent and protect. Now, since then, there have been a lot of laws that have been passed, as well as a lot of case law that came off of the Fair Housing Act that gave certain powers and helped people. Now, it went both ways, and the problem that exists with the Fair Housing Act, especially when it comes to discrimination, is proving it. That's where documentation comes in. If you feel that you're being discriminated against, it's important that you document everything that's taking place. And even then, it's still very difficult, but we still have the rights. And one of the important things that exist is being able to hold people accountable for some of the things that they say and the things that they do. And it's important to document all of that. I mean, I've had situations where I've had clients actually bring court reporters or videos and record some of the things that were being said to them from from property managers as well as from condo associations, etc. These are important things. Now, interestingly enough, the results of the Fair Housing Act has allowed for people to live anywhere they really want without being discriminated against. However, what we find nowadays, and you'll see, is that you still have massive segregation of people, whether it's not legal and it's not done on quote-unquote purpose. However, you have socioeconomic splits where you have what they call urban areas, or you have areas that are predominantly black and that could be poor, and you're not getting people moving in, yet you have the result of that, or another piece of that is gentrification. And that's something that also needs to be protected against. Gentrification, where you have groups coming in that are wealthier, more affluent, and they're slowly forcing out the members of that community that live in that community. And those are things that need to be offset and protected against in order to maintain the character and the integrity of the neighborhood as it was before. So you're seeing things of gentrification similar to what's happening in Pilsen. You see it happening in the west side of Chicago. In the near west side, many people don't realize that in Lincoln Park, back in the 70s, it was a very, very tough neighborhood. Now Lincoln Park has homes that go for over $1 million, $2 million, $3 million. So we have a long way to go in terms of making sure that there's equality and no discrimination taking place. Other things such as reverse redlining. So it's important to be informed. It's important to understand. It's important to document. If you feel that you're being discriminated against, or you feel that someone is not giving you your rights, make sure you document everything that you remember that's happening. And as it's happening, document it. By documentation, I mean writing it down, dates, times, people who are saying things, what things were exactly said, and when they said them. And you also, if you can, record their video or audio. That's also important. Keeping emails, keeping written records, and the more written documentation you have, the better it is for your case. So, again, I have to say, we've got a few minutes left. My number here is 312-738-1060. There's a lot that's happening. There is overt racism, there is subliminal racism, there is microaggressions. There's a lot of things that are happening, and housing is only a small piece and microcosm of some of the things that we're afflicted with as minorities. And we have to work together to make sure that these things don't continue. But housing is important, because that's where you live. And you want to make sure that nobody can take that away from you without following certain rules, whether it's under the Fair Housing Act and you're being discriminated against, or whether it's being foreclosed on, or your landlord evicting you without having a right to evict you, or simply by turning off your electricity when he had no right to do so. So these are all things that are wrong and illegal, and we have to be very conscious of these things that are happening. And unfortunately, and as an attorney, and some people who've been wronged will learn this, the justice is blind. And if you're looking for justice, and you're trying to get justice, in a lot of cases, you might have the greatest case in the world, but you have the wrong lawyer. Or you have the greatest case and the greatest lawyer, but you end up with a judge who rules against you. So it's really tough to get enforcement of these issues. And it's important that we all stick together and band together and try to educate people on what they can and cannot do. So that way, people's rights aren't trampled upon. And it really comes back down to the onus upon us as human beings, as individuals, to work together. And understanding compassionately what other people are going through and the troubles that they're going through. Similar to what one of the callers mentioned today with regards to the immigration issues and housing rights and DACA and everything else. Every side has an opinion and every side has their position. At the end of the day, it's about being compassionate, understanding what is the plight of everyone, and trying to find the right direction to go. That's the hardest part. That's the struggle, is trying to find compassion for the other person's side as to what are they struggling with and what is it that happening to them that has them take such a staunch and firm position. Why are they being hurt? What are they going through? With regards to the landlord and the renter is stuck. It was her guest, a friend of hers, who broke the door. In reality, her friend should step up and do the honorable thing and pay for the door. Apparently, they're not doing that. The landlord is out the money because they had to fix the door. So who's really responsible? So there's the legal rules and regulations that have to be followed and should be adhered to by each of the parties. But more importantly, what's the human thing to do? What's the right thing to do? What would you want to be done if you were in those shoes? And follow that path. And at the end, sometimes compromise and a little bit hurting on one side to the other side, or maybe you have to take a little bit of a hit. And everybody take a little bit of hit just to make it all right for everybody. So, my name is Faisal Khatib. I'm with Better Informed Housing. We thank you so much for calling us today. We thank you for joining us. We thank you for watching. And if you want to reach out to us and you have any questions, you could always reach out to us at betterinformed.org, 218 North Jefferson Suite 103, Chicago, Illinois. Our phone number is 312-533-2688, and you can email us at neighbors@betterinformed.org. We're wishing you a good night.